Let's switch gears entirely
Yeah.
and go back to a poem here.
Yeah.
Um, Inhabitants.
Oh gosh, I'm glad to read that one. I have to give you the epigraph, the first epigraph to the book as a whole. It's from Darwin's Voyage of the Beagle. He writes, "But these," he goes to Tierra del Fuego, right? "But these Fuegians in the canoe were quite naked, and even one full-grown woman was absolutely so. These poor wretches were stunted in their growth, their hideous faces bedaubed with white paint, their skins filthy and greasy, their hair entangled, their voices discordant, and their gestures violent. Viewing such men, one can hardly make oneself believe that they are fellow creatures and inhabitants of the same world." So this is the poem Inhabitants. I know. You've spent this whole day wandering through clumps of trees and seen the sunlight shine until that gushy heart is all a swing at God's deaf needlework, so soft and fine. Yea, like some vicar mounting to his nest, you sigh and stutter sweet and gentle words, that all is love, but we are love the best, a bit more even than those charming birds. But man's hands spoil everything they touch, and someone following after you will spoil the scene with shifty eyes and thieving clutch, and make you weep were sprung from common soil. Then you will preach a different sort of text, just like the naturalist who turned explorer. Each painted face he saw left him perplexed, and made him feel our brotherhood with horror.
This reminds me of a line in another of your quarantine notebook poems where you talk about empathy.
Mhm,
The religion of empathy and
mhm.
how it often often flies away quite quickly under the right circumstances. Um, you're commenting on a lot of like very modern tendencies here, and certainly the tendency to kind of like idealize and romanticize nature
Mhm.
would be one of those, and then
Yeah.
to kind of to have a disgust reaction to one's fellow man.
Many years ago, I was in the Church of Ireland chapel, attached the churchyard attached to which is where W.B. Yeats is buried, and I went in for some kind of Vesper service. I don't quite remember. I don't quite remember how I got there or what occasioned it. But the Anglican or Church of Ireland priest mounted his pulpit, and he said, "Did you notice that everything that God has made in nature is good? It's only what man makes that is bad, or that's ugly or despoiled." And I remember the woman next to me just leaned over and said, "That's not true." um, that's a very romantic and sentimental doctrine, and it seems fitting that I should have heard it in a romantic and sentimental church, uh, from a romantic and sentimental priest. Um, the Sentimentality, our feelings, um, are of course such powerful things, but we rely on them too much out of hope that they'll be very powerful for us, right?
Hmm.
We want to generate emotions for ourselves. I love Walker Percy, or Binks Bowling and Walker Percy's The Moviegoer, where he says he doesn't trust music, because he knows that music always has designs on him to get him to feel something. And you think back to the 19th century, that supposedly greatly disillusioned fellow Nietzsche, who clearly was using Wagner's music to gin up some emotion in his otherwise rather flaccid soul. Sentimentality uh, is precisely because our feelings can be so powerful. They're also really prone to a kind of abuse, and a gross abuse. Um, if you want to affirm things as good and as worthy of love, you've got to be willing to see things in their being, not just in how they make you feel. Uh, you have to go, as it were, from Kant, who only talks about the presentation of the object, to Marathon or to Aquinas, to Plato, to Aristotle, to see the substance, to see the form, to see the being of things in their existence. And so this poem is my critical move within the book about this propensity to a sentimental account of being as opposed to a properly ontological one. But of course, it's answering and questioning other poems in the book that take the deliverances of being more hopefully.
You're making me think of an Oscar Wilde quote. He says, "Music makes one feel so romantic. At least it always gets on one's nerves," which is the same thing nowadays.
Yeah. And uh, Wilde in Picture of Dorian Gray is actually really good at seeing through the pretenses of aestheticism. All of his characters give way and refuse to see things for what they are. They they all they all end up saying, "Well, I love beautiful things, but I really just like them for the feeling they induce in me." Um,
Hmm.
Whereas if an aesthete were really an aesthete, he would see the thing, he would see the form, and he would see the beauty in the form, not just the feeling it gives to him. I think that this is why actually the Thomist revival I think was such a marvelous thing for the church and for all of civilizations of our civilization's history, is learning to appreciate being as being
Hmm.
is absolutely essential to the dignity of the human person. Um,
Yeah.
we talked about this in the Vision of the Soul interview that our status as intellectual animals, as rational animals, is the capacity to receive form, to receive the intelligible reality of substances and to enter into communion thereby with them. But we poor lazy humans don't like the intellectual rigor that goes along with seeing things for what they are and in the depths of their mystery. And so we often gin up a cheap substitute called sentimentality, but it's
Yeah.
flabby.
Well, for me, this is the fundamental value of art as well. At least speaking as a musician, the ability to appreciate something for what it is. But I recognize that
Mhm.
that wouldn't have been sort of an obvious. I'm certain that's it has everything to do with my reading of philosophers like Maritain and Gilson,
Mhm.
because it wouldn't be obvious to someone certainly probably in the 19th century context, that it wasn't something more to do with the sentiments or something like that. I think Wilde had a definition of sentimentality too, something to do with feeling emotions one hasn't earned, or
Yes.
something like that.
Yeah.